So one of the interesting and sort of frustrating things I ran into while compiling the ebook after legalization was the fact that you try to be fair, you try to give it a fair treatment, and I wanted to find out if there's legitimate reason to believe that marijuana is a highly effective medicinal agent, and there's not a lot of research. It's really kind of frustrating when you look around. It's kind of, the jury's kind of still out on a lot of things. And we don't conduct very much research on marijuana here in the United States because it's been illegal under federal law for a lot of years. And it's very hard for researchers to get started doing research on marijuana's medical effects, and it's very hard for them to get funded because they can't get federal funding. So most of the really interesting, groundbreaking research being done on marijuana and its medical uses is coming from overseas, and some of it's very, very interesting. I ran into this, so in researching this book, I was sort of acutely aware of everything that was coming out about marijuana. This comes from an article, CNN's Sanjay Gupta. He's a neurosurgeon, a medical doctor, and he wrote this article for CNN online, which he calls Why I Changed My Mind on Weed. And this came right after he did a documentary called Weed, Pot Over Pills. And he's arguing, and I found this to be true too in the research, the scientific research, that people who use marijuana, a lot of them use it for neuropathic pain, as a sleep aid, and it's certainly a lot safer for you than opioids. But other research that's coming out that's really interesting. There's one or two studies, I could only locate a couple of papers, but there's some researchers in Spain looking at anti-cancer effects of marijuana. So far it's very, very preliminary. Don't get excited and think if you go out and buy some weed you're not going to get cancer. We don't know. This is very preliminary, but it seems to shrink certain types of cancer cells in vitro, which means, in the lab, in a dish. And another thing that was very interesting that I found while I was looking through all of this literature, and the CNN documentary Sanjay Gupta did had some people on, and this is anecdotal. We don't rely on anecdotal evidence in science or in social science. You need data. But he interviewed these people who have long-term heroin addicts, and some of them had been to treatment dozens of times. And this one guy said, I started smoking weed and my cravings for heroin went away. Again, this is very preliminary, but researchers knew about this as early as the 1980s. There was articles being written about marijuana being able to act as an antagonist in the brain by sort of blocking opiate receptors, if this article will ever load. Here we go. Advertisement. Excellent. But it seems to, so they knew about this in 1987, modulation of rat brain opioid receptors by cannabinoids. They seem to block the receptors. So if Sanjay Gupta is right, that marijuana seems to kind of fix the brains, is the way he put it, of heroin users, there's probably some scientific basis for this. But like I said, it's very preliminary. If the federal government would get out of the way and allow researchers to do more work on this, we might find that the anecdotal evidence of people being cured of their heroin addiction by marijuana could actually be real. There's other research that I quote in the book, I cite in the book, showing that people who are on other treatments like naltrexone for heroin addiction do better and stick to their program and don't relapse when they also use weed. So this is interesting. There's a lot of interesting new evidence. Of course, we should know more if we can do research here in the United States. So more on topics like this later. Stay tuned.